What is a great oyster? For me, it's complexity. You know, it starts out as one thing, and just as you start to realize briny or sweet, it changes to something else. And even after you've eaten the oyster, you're getting more and more. I grew up on Duxbury Bay. My dad was a lobsterman, and I loved working out on the bay. I loved the independence of it. I loved the physical work. It felt like home to me. So in 1990, I got some clam seed, and I had a small plot out in the bay. I tried growing clams, and I was hooked. And I had put everything that I'd ever earned into clam seed and all the gear I needed. And in 1995, I got wiped out by a parasite. So all of my clams died. Really thought about giving up at that point. I knew there was a guy up in Maine selling oyster seed, but the problem was that there were no wild oysters in Duxbury. So I didn't even know if oysters would grow here. And lo and behold, they not only grew, but they were pretty good when we harvested them. I always felt like everything happened for a reason, and it led me to oysters.
This is where all the magic happens. This is where all of our shellfish start their life. Bring them in, put them into seawater in the hatchery, warm the water up. It actually tricks them into spawning. Once we've got the larvae, the eggs are fertilized and developed, they go into these tanks. It's a great environment for the oysters to develop in. No bacteria, it's super clean, warm, and then we add the food. So these are 6-day-old oysters, and it looks like dust in there. And there are about 8 million in this tank. So that's them. That's what they look like on day 6. When they're ready, when they've reached the right size, they come into these downwellers. So there's a little bit of shell chip in here, so ground up shell. That's what oysters like to settle on. They go into the system where water and algae is passing by so that they can feed. They'll grow very, very quickly in these systems. They have access to a lot of food and a lot of flow. We have to grow all the food for the shellfish, and they eat live algae or phytoplankton. So we have probably a dozen different species in here based on the nutritional value, but also the cell size. This is kind of the final stage. And you can see we've really expanded the volume from those little tiny flasks in the first room until the K-tubes in this room. These oysters that are 6 weeks old, 8 weeks old, these will probably be market size at this time next year. When they're this size, 1 million weighs about 2 pounds and will fit in your 2 hands. About 18 months later, that will be 200,000 pounds and completely covers 1 acre. So it's the expansion of that volume that is kind of the challenge to the oyster farmers. We take a certain percent of those and broadcast them right out on the bottom. We say it's free range, and those will become the Island Creeks. When I started growing oysters here, there were no wild oysters. It's just a little bit too cold in Duxbury Bay. So we didn't know when we started harvesting oysters if they'd be any good. And I guess we kind of won the lottery on that one.
What makes oysters so great in this bay is our tidal range. We have about a 10-foot average high to low. And so essentially all of this water flushes out, and then 6 hours later, this deep, cold Cape Cod Bay water comes back in with fresh nutrients and feeds the oysters.
This is really the Napa Valley of oyster farming. So it wasn't that long ago that, it was really just me and 1 or 2 other people on small boats and rakes, and today we employ over 300 people. We sell to about 1,000 chefs across the country. We distribute not only our own oysters, but oysters from about 100 different farms up and down the East Coast. The industry as a whole is super sustainable because, it's not extractive like wild fishing. Shellfish farming is actually really good for the environment. It's actually one of the only proteins that I know of that's grown that improves the quality of the environment that it's grown in. Oysters are very efficient at remediating nitrogen. They're sequestering carbon. They're a very, very net positive for the environment. The Island Creeks are free range, so essentially they're broadcast on the bottom. We use small boats with dredges to drag those up, and we spend a lot of time sorting through the different sizes. And then the rest of the oysters, whether it's the Aunt Dottie's, the Row 34s, or the Honey Drops, they grow in trays. And on those, we're just picking through the trays to take out the market size oysters.
It's the same seed that goes to any farm. And what makes the oyster take on its different flavor is where in the bay it's grown and how it's grown. If it's in the mud, it's got a little bit of that earthiness to it. If it's in the tray, it's gonna be a little cleaner, brinier, and the dotties a little sweeter because they're getting that cold water just as it comes right in off of Cape Cod Bay.
And a lot of it is kind of on demand. So we know what we need on a specific day, so we're able to go out and actually harvest that, which is really unique compared to like how the wild fisheries work, where you go out and catch it and then you try to sell it. This way, we sell it and then we go get what people need, and it adds to that sort of level of freshness. Because we know what we need for what the demand is or what the orders are, it could be less than 24 hours if you're in Boston to get the oyster from the water to your plate. One of the unique things about local chefs, the Boston chefs and New England chefs, is that they have such great access to local seafood and really, the greatest seafood in the world right here in New England. There are so many chefs that really care about that quality and freshness. We even have chefs that come here to the farm to go out on the boat and see the farm, and we realized how interesting it was and how much of a draw it was. And so we opened it up to the public to get a sense of really what we do and what makes that oyster from a seed to your plate. So we do groups of tours 5 days a week through May, June, July, August, and into September. There's a little bit of science in the hatchery. From there, it's a little bit of more laid-back fun. We get out on the boat, we shuck some oysters, it's BYOB. So you come for the tour and you get to see where the oysters come from. But you can also sit right outside on our patio and look out over the water, and you can actually smell the water. So the experience of sitting there and eating the oysters and smelling the salt air from where they came is pretty magical. Obviously, we grow a lot of oysters, but we're back to growing some clams. We grow scallops, bay scallops that we sell locally. We grow surf clams, which are generally a big ocean clam. We grow them up to about 1.5 inches. And all of these products are really good in the tins that we're now making. So we have one of the only single source artisanal canneries in the country down in New Bedford. I love going to the raw bar and actually sitting there with perfectly shucked oysters that are cold and presented really well. Generally, when I eat an oyster, it's warm, it's plucked right out of the water, and oftentimes it's opened with a rusty screwdriver. Best way to eat oysters, I would quote Anthony Bourdain and say, the same way your knuckle-dragging forefathers ate them, right out of the shell.